Davies, and I'm here to tell you you're listening to the Decarbonisation Dialogue, a podcast from Salix.
Welcome to the Decarbonisation Dialogue. Welcome to delivering on climate change, our collective challenge. I am Hannah Walker, and I believe that the best way to communicate a message is by being passionate about what you are talking about. Through that passion, I believe that you take people with you and create action using your influence to make change and make a difference. Today, we've got Professor Lorraine Whitmarsh as a guest, MBE, and Lorraine is Director of the Centre for Climate Change and Social Transformations at the University of Bath. Lorraine is an environmental psychologist specialising in perceptions and behaviour in relation to climate change, energy and transport. Her research projects have included studies of energy efficiency behaviours, waste reduction and carrier bag reuse, perceptions of smart technologies and electric vehicles, low carbon lifestyles and responses to climate change. Between 2014 and 2019, Lorraine held a prestigious European Research Council starting grant, Low Carbon Lifestyles and Behavioural Spillover, and since 2019 holds an ERC Consolidated Grant, Understanding and Leveraging Moments of Change for Pro-Environmental Behaviour Shifts. She is also lead author for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in Working Group 2 and regularly advises governmental and other organisations on low carbon behaviour and climate change communication. Fantastic to have Lorraine with us as guest today. So welcome, Lorraine.
Thank you, Hannah. Lovely to be with you.
Now, Lorraine, can we start today by talking a little bit about your career? You haven't had a direct route to psychology because you've also studied religion, theology, French and communication. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've developed your career?
Yeah, it does look like I didn't really know what I was doing for quite a long time, which is probably quite accurate. I think looking back, there was a bit of a thread that connects all those things, which is that I've always been really interested in what people believe and why they do what they do. So it did start with quite an interesting kind of religious views and how people translate those into actions, how they understand the world, including the natural world, through religious and spiritual beliefs, and then kind of evolved a bit more into how do we really engage with the environment through our beliefs, but also how does scientific information about environmental risks play into that. So that's where I've sort of increasingly had my focus over the years, and so that's my where I've ended up really as an environmental psychologist.
And of course, you were heavily influenced, I believe, by your father, who was a professor of environmental economics. And I think I read somewhere that you used to go into work with him. That must have been quite an influence.
Yeah, he was a professor of environmental economics at the University of Portsmouth. And so I think that I'm sure that had quite a significant formative influence on me. Certainly, I was keen to do research from quite a young age, just to kind of find things out, to kind of the research methods and the understanding why people do what they do. I think that was where a lot of that came from, yeah.
That's wonderful. And can I ask you also, you've had this, and we will be talking further about your career, but you also received that very great honour of an MBE, and you met King Charles. I think when you received that letter, that communications, I think you described it, you thought it was a hoax. Tell us about that for a moment.
I definitely did. I think because we get all sorts of emails like claiming to be about various things, and my natural instinct was this cannot be about kind of a genuine honour. So I did think it was a hoax. Then I thought maybe it was a mistake, and it took me a little while before I did believe it. And actually there was a phone number on it, and I phoned up and I said, I've got a letter and I just wanted to check whether it was a real, and a lovely lady replied and said, yes, it's all genuine, you really have been nominated. So it took a while for the reality to set in, and even now I sort of do wonder if if they made a mistake, but it was wonderful, just absolutely wonderful to be part of that, and that it reflected on the work that we've done in the centre, and what we've managed to do as a team. I think my name gets mentioned, but it's absolutely the work of the centre that I think was kind of spotlighted through that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, you described it as a surreal experience, and it is quite a wonderful honour. So let's move on to climate. And let's look at what's happening to our planet. And we're going to talk about behaviour change because there is so much about what you do. So in terms of what's happening to our planet, we all need to change, don't we? We're eating the wrong diet. We're over-consuming. We're travelling too much. We're wasting. There's a lot of waste. Tell us about this. Can we change? Can all of us change? Is it a government problem? Is it a business problem? Is it our problem? How does that work?
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't sort of separate it as being either or. I think we all have to change very profoundly. That's clear from the work that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has put forward, that the work of the UK Committee on Climate Change has shown that technology is going to be a big part of the way in which we solve climate change, but changing our behaviour and changing wider society is also absolutely critical. We all need to change, but it's not either or in the sense of we either change our lifestyles or government or business act. It's interdependent in the sense that actually it's very difficult for us to change our lifestyles unless government help remove the barriers and create the right incentives and infrastructure for us to do that. And similarly, business in terms of how they innovate and the sorts of products and services that they produce. If those things are not available for us if the low carbon alternative is not there, we're obviously not going to be able to use those things. So I think it's about those three entities coming together: government, business and civil society together playing a critical role and reinforcing each other and putting pressure on each other. So as citizens and consumers, we can also put pressure on business to provide services and products that are lower carbon and more sustainable. So we can choose those products, and we can boycott companies that aren't doing the right thing. We can put pressure on government to remove the barriers that we experience through voting, through protesting, through writing to our MP, and so on. So in our role as consumers and citizens, there's plenty that we can do to change wider society and make it easy for us to do the right thing as well.
And how much is it, because we've got this perception about the cost, because it isn't cheap to do any of this, to change our behaviour is one thing. And then to look at, for example, how we use our energy, how we consume our energy. Yes, you're right. Government has a big responsibility, as does business. But a lot of it for you and me comes down to how much we've got in our pocket, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Cost is a really important driver of why we do or do not do things. And so we know at the moment, for example, electric vehicles and heat pumps do cost more than the high carbon alternatives, although the costs are starting to come down. And so those cost barriers are an impediment for people to choose those low carbon technologies. So yes, it's important that government make the low carbon option cheaper for us. Similarly, the Committee on Climate Change, their latest annual report pointed out that electricity from green sources needs to absolutely come down in price. At the moment, it's not cheap enough. So we need to make it easy for people to do the right thing. And part of that is making it cheaper. But cost isn't the only thing that drives our behaviour. We also choose things that are maybe cost a little bit more, but offer other benefits, that they're maybe more convenient, or they offer health benefits, or they're more attractive, or whatever it is. So sometimes there are other reasons why we choose the things that we do. We are also influenced by what other people are doing. And so the social context is an important driver of why we do or do not do things. So it's not to say that economic drivers are the only thing that influence our behaviour, but they're certainly important. And we do need to make the low carbon option cheaper.
Now, Lorraine, from a practical point of view, you seem to be reaching out to large numbers of people a lot of the time, asking for people's views and trying to work out what it is that triggers people's behaviour. Can you tell us a little bit about what your day looks like? How do you get to the bottom of this research? How do you decide? Because you've worked with sports fans, for example. So how do you decide who you're going to speak to find out how people are thinking?
Yeah, so I'd say my role is kind of split really between leading research and then getting research insights used by leaders, decision makers, including kind of policy makers. On the research side, what we try to do is to identify what are the critical research gaps and where can we provide answers to research questions that will be used by decision makers, leaders, and so on. So we often kind of design our research in collaboration with those decision makers and stakeholders to make sure we're asking the right questions that they want answered. What we've done within our centre, CAST, is to identify key areas of behaviour change that have been difficult in the past. We call them kind of sticky areas or sticky issues. So around changing travel habits, including reducing flying, which is something that has not really been tackled very much, changing diets, changing consumption habits, changing how we heat our homes, our water use, and so on. All of those areas of demand are critical if we're going to tackle climate change. They're also important for improving our well-being, by the way. So even if we don't think climate change is an important issue, actually changing lifestyles has wider well-being benefits for people. So we have identified those as being key areas. Very recently, we've also started to see the opportunities around kind of leisure, culture, sport. So we're starting to move into that area because, again, it's really under-researched, but there's a huge opportunity there to leverage the identity sports fans have as a group. So as a supporter of a particular club, this is an identity that's important to you. So if you can engage people through those groups that are very meaningful to them, then there's an opportunity there to bring people together through collective action to more effectively tackle climate change in ways that are meaningful to them. For example, through ensuring that their club has lower energy bills or is more protected against flooding, or whatever the sort of hook is to connect what's important to them to sustainability and climate change. So we're starting to do work, for example, with the charity Pledge Ball to engage fans in climate action and see what works in terms of messaging and behaviour change interventions.
That's those sports fans. Are we talking football, or are we talking all sports across the board?
More of the work we've done so far has been with football fans. There's an awful lot of football fans in the UK and elsewhere, so that seems like a really good starting point. And that's where already a number of the initiatives that Pledge Ball have been rolling out have focused particularly on football. But we've also started to do work with rugby clubs and had conversations with cricket clubs. So I think we're keen to sort of see where we can go with regards to other sports. But football is the one where we've done a bit more.
In terms of football, how are you finding, which clubs have you been involved with, and how are you finding the response from the officials, actually, as well as the fans?
I've been asked to be on the Sustainability Advisory Committee of Brentford Football Club. And it's really exciting to see the initiatives that they've already put in place to reduce their carbon footprint. They're also supporting biodiversity in really important ways. They're known as the bees. So actually it kind of plays really well in terms of their team identity, that they're promoting biodiversity around the club as well as reducing emissions. So they're already doing some really fantastic things. And we have started to have conversations about how we can support that work, how we can engage fans more directly in terms of behaviour change, for example, travelling sustainably to matches. So that's something that we're supporting them with.
Superb. So it's working with the club, but also engaging with the fans and their habits, as you say, travel and how they consume, what they're consuming on their way to matches, and then presumably those people taking it home to their families and creating a whole kind of culture of change. That's absolutely fascinating, and it's a easily definable audience as well. In terms of that club and that loyalty to that club.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we know that actually the more you can engage groups of people, the more effective your interventions are likely to be. But you can potentially get that spillover that you've described, that you can actually get people to talk about the multiple things that they can do, that, as you say, they can also take it home and to their communities or to their families to think about the wider impact of that work. So yeah, it is a really exciting opportunity to leverage that group.
Super. Now, on a broader, wider scale, what's next for climate research globally, would you say, as we're seeing global politics shift so much? What next?
There are evidence gaps, I guess, in all areas of climate research, and the area that we work in more on the social science side, and particularly thinking about behaviour change, some of the opportunities there really are about testing interventions to see what works. There is evidence around kind of how to communicate climate change, and we've done sort of lab-based studies to try to change behaviour, but there aren't as many actual real world experiments that get people to change their behaviour. So I've already just mentioned, working with football clubs to actually change fans' real behaviours in terms of their travel habits. We've done work with local authorities, for example, Cornwall Council, to try to encourage, again, sustainable travel habits, getting people out of cars, to try micro-mobility, so e-scooters, e-bikes, and so on. We've done work around kind of sustainable diets as well, encouraging more adoption of community veg box schemes. So this is really where I think a lot of the opportunities are to design or actually co-design interventions with partner organisations of various kinds to test out what works in the real world. So it's moving outside the lab, I think, is a big frontier.
It's a big question. You might not be able to answer it, but what will climate look like if we don't respond to these environment issues today?
We know that we have a really small window of opportunity to avoid the worst risks of climate change. We are already living with climate change. Let me be clear about that. It's not that it's something that is a future risk. It's already something that we're living with. And already the risks are significant for many parts of the world, but particularly for the global south, where they have lower resilience. We're going to be seeing more and more of those sorts of extreme weather events, rising temperatures, human migration, disease, etc., if we don't reduce emissions, but if we also don't adapt to those changes. So if we don't reduce carbon footprints, and in the UK, the average carbon footprint is something like about 7 or 8 tons of carbon per person, we need to get that down to about 2.5 tons of carbon by the end of this decade. That's in about 4.5 years. That's a really tall order if we were to keep global warming within 1.5 degrees C, which already is looking pretty optimistic that we've likely missed that target. If we keep it to 2 degrees, which was the other target within the Paris Agreement, that's still very ambitious. It's not impossible, but it requires that scale of quite profound lifestyle change and change across society. So the good news is that we have started to reduce emissions. In the UK, our emissions have halved since 1990, but most of that has come through decarbonising our energy supply and not really tackling the demand side. So that's where the hard work is still to be done.
Mm-hmm. This is not meant to catch you out in any kind of way, but for yourself and your own lifestyle, what changes have you made to your living and lifestyle? And do you consider yourself living a sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah, I can definitely testify to it being difficult to lead a low carbon lifestyle, and I am by no means at all a saint or doing everything that I could. But we did about a year or two ago move to an electric car. So now we have a sort of hire purchase thing. So it was too expensive to buy outright, but we kind of essentially rent an electric vehicle. We avoid flying. Actually, I recently went to an environmental psychology conference in Lithuania and went by train and bus. So it was 2.5 days of travel each way. So to avoid flying, which was actually not a bad journey. I got a lot of work done, so it was very productive and it was quite sociable and got to see a bit more of Europe than I would have otherwise done. But it did cost a bit more, and obviously it took quite a lot longer. So it's not, those are the sorts of lengths that I sometimes try to go to. I don't eat red meat, but I haven't been able to give up cheese. That is my major weakness, I have to say.
So those are all very positive steps. And I think even if we cannot give up flying for a particular reason, and I feel terribly guilty myself because my family are all overseas, as everybody kind of grows older and life moves on, we want to see each other more frequently rather than less frequently. So that's hard. But generally, if it gets to a point where we have to start thinking, if we're just going on holiday, for the sake of it, let's think about how we're traveling and how we're getting there. So that's a good lesson and a good thing to adhere to. So what next for you, though? You have a highly successful career. You've done huge amounts of research contributing to how government is shaping, really, and how we're moving forward with policies. But where do your ambitions lie for the future, for your career and for your research? What next? I'm
still really enjoying leading CAST, the Centre for Climate Change and Social Transformations. I think we have done really well to kind of show the ways in which behaviour change, organisational change is possible and the wider benefits that it can bring. So for me, a really key priority is to get more funding to continue the work of the centre and to build on the insights that we've already found over the last 6 years since we started. So yeah, building up the centre is really the key sort of thing for me. I do want to do more policy impact work. So a couple of years ago, I was appointed as the special advisor to the House of Lords inquiry on behaviour change for environmental and climate goals. And that was a wonderful experience over the course of about kind of 8 or 9 months advising that inquiry. So doing more of that sort of thing definitely would be important to me. I really love the idea of getting our research used by policymakers. So more of that, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely fascinating. We'll be certainly looking out for your research. And I was obviously researching you, and I found an interview, and you went back to your old school and you gave a little bit of advice to the children who are at the school. And you said, and I love it, actually. I love your quote. You said, and I hope it's accurate. I took it from there online. You said, use your skills for good. There are 1 million green jobs. Look at what interests you and how you can help in that context. Get your research out there and make it publicly available. I think that was a really inspirational quote. So use your skills for good. Thank you very much to Professor Lorraine Whitmarsh for joining us today. And for giving us and providing us such incredible insight into all of that research at CAST that you're doing and have done throughout your career, and a wonderful story about that, receiving that great honour of an MBE. There can be no doubt that climate change is the biggest challenge of our time. Today, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions to slow global warming. Today, we must act for tomorrow, adjusting our lifestyles to current and future impacts of climate change. Today, we must use our collective wisdom to deliver on our climate commitments. Today, we work for tomorrow's world. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channels, and please let us know what you think. Please do email us at podcast@salixfinance.co.uk. Thank you very much again to Lorraine.
Thanks, Hannah.
I'm Rebecca, and I'm here to tell you that you've been listening to the Decarbonisation Dialogue, a podcast from Salix. For more information about our work and to find more content, please visit salixfinance.co.uk/podcasts.